WebIDQ is the next generation of our workflow manager and the successor of the legacy MetIDQ software. It's a cloud-based software which allows you to have access from anywhere through a web browser. It is a required companion to our kits that guides you through the entire workflow, all the way from sample registration and customizing the plate layout through data processing, quantification, data normalization, and finally exporting the results in various file formats. So a WebIDQ subscription is needed to run biocrates kits and to process kit-generated data. The software has been redesigned from the ground to enhance user experience, and many new and improved features have been incorporated. That brings me to the question, what are the reasons why we have built WebIDQ? The answer is quite simple, because we want to accelerate your research and to make your life easier. Advanced features in WebIDQ streamline your analysis and give you more confidence with your metabolomics data. With a new automated peak picking feature, which is based on machine learning, you have two advantages. First, it reduces the risk of variation when different people set the integration ranges. So the automated peak picking can improve the reproducibility in the inter-day or inter-lab comparison. And furthermore, by this automated process, you are simply faster in performing the peak integration and quantification. Another new feature is in the validation part. Besides the accuracy check, also the CVs are calculated across the QC replicates over the plate, giving you higher confidence about the performance of the measurement and finally the analytical quality of your data. WebIDQ is accessible through the My Biocrates portal, where you can manage the user administration and invite up to 10 users to expand the collaboration between different groups within the organization. With WebIDQ, you have more flexibility. You can always use it independent of time and location. You just need a computer. And you are always up to date because updates or new versions go live immediately. But that's not all. There are a couple of more benefits that are featured by WebIDQ. With WebIDQ, we offer a worry-free cloud service, including backups and maintenance of the database. And you have access from any place and just need an internet connection. And the biocrates infrastructure is designed with layers of protection to help ensure your data is secure. As mentioned, there are new validation features to more reliably check the performance of the measurements, and the auto peak picking feature makes your data processing faster. Another great tool is the Metabo indicator that is now available for all kits under WebIDQ. At this point, I would like to give some further information about it for those who haven't heard much about the Metabo indicator yet. It is a tool that automatically calculates predefined sums and ratios of metabolite concentrations. These indicators can reflect enzyme activities and are connected to certain pathophysiological events, what helps researchers with regard to biological interpretation and to get insights into metabolic processes and pathways. Further benefit of the Metabo indicator is that it normalizes inter-individual variations and therefore increases the statistical power. The workflow is quite simple and intuitive, and there is also a user manual available online directly in the application. Backups are generated automatically and regularly. You don't need to install anything manually and always have access to the latest software. For existing users, for existing MetIDQ users, there is an easy-to-use tool that automatically migrates the MetIDQ database to WebIDQ. WebIDQ is integrated into the biocrates ecosystem and part of the My Biocrates portal, where you can manage user rights as mentioned. So again, you can add up to 10 users per organization and give access rights to those who need access to data. when the subscription is about to expire, you will get automated renewal notifications in time. Let's talk about the features for end users. WebIDQ has all essential functions of MetIDQ, as you see here in the table, plus many new features. So what is new compared to MetIDQ? The user manual is now integrated directly in the application and available online. There are also question mark buttons throughout the software that give you instructions at the corresponding place. WebIDQ supports the SykesOS software for worklist generation and export in a compatible format for OS. Also new is that processing and the quantification of the LC data can now be performed not only for the Quant 500 kit, but also across all kits. This will be available very soon in January, and the import of LC results files from the MS software, what users of the P180 and P400HR kit, for example, know from MetIDQ, is not featured anymore in WebIDQ. So those users can simplify and reduce the workflow down to just one software. We already talked about the auto peak picking and new validation features. And early next year, also the export of the results to the online tool MetIDQ will be possible, which provides a ready-to-use framework for data cleaning and statistical analysis for metabolomics datasets. As mentioned, WebIDQ is integrated into the biocrates portal, where you can invite users and manage the user rights. And once a user account has been created, the user can easily access WebIDQ via direct link. I have recorded a short demo of WebIDQ before this webinar, and this I will show you now to give you some impressions of the software. I have started WebIDQ in a browser, and to start simple, via the avatar button, you have access to the OPs, to the migration wizard, to migrate the database, the MetIDQ database to WebIDQ, and to the user manual. WebIDQ basically has the functionality that you already know from MetIDQ. In MetIDQ, there were 4 modules. MetLimbs from MetIDQ is now just limbs. MetCons and MetVal is now quantification. So this covers the whole data processing and validation parts. And MetStat is now just called what it is, namely results, where you can obtain and export the results. In limbs, you manage all your samples and projects. So in the samples tab, you can import and register your experimental samples from an Excel sheet. Under projects, you can define a project and submission. A submission is usually one kit, so we can have several submissions in a project. So let's quickly make a new submission. We call it MX, for example. Now we can generate the work list and the plate layout. So here first we need to select an OP, as you know from MetIDQ. So that contains measurement specific parameters and validation settings in order to process the data later. Now we click next. Here we can link the samples to the kit plate. So we can do this sample type by sample type. The blank is already there per default. Now let's link a 0 sample just by drag and drop. Can link the calibration standards, select all by Control A and move it down. The same for the QCs. And finally for the unknowns. Then we click OK. So now we have our layout of the kit run, just as an example, that we can further modify if desired. For example, we can copy or delete samples by right click, or we can move a sample to another position by drag and drop. Or we can also move a sample between other samples, yeah, as here. When the plate layout is done, we click Export Worklist to MS. So this is pretty much the same as you know from MetIDQ. Here we select the MS type, the vendor, and the autosampler type, and finally click Export. When clicking Export, a CSV or a text file will be generated depending on the vendor software that you can directly import into the MS software to run the batch. After the measurement, we go to quantification. Here, in the integration tab, you can upload your raw data files just by drag and drop. After the upload, the integration range must be defined. For this, the new auto peak picking feature really helps you a lot, as it automatically sets the integration ranges for all analytes and samples within seconds. Afterwards, of course, you can still walk through the analytes and the peaks and to improve the integration if required. Also new is that the peak of the corresponding internal standard is displayed in each window. When zooming in, this can be seen a bit better in this case. So it's the gray one here that that is also shown in a separate window underneath. You can also display the peak integration of a compound across several samples. For example, just select a couple in separate windows now side by side, just by clicking multiple samples in the left table and by choosing whether you want to have 2 columns or 3 columns or even more. And therefore the peaks are shown at the same time. Here you can do some adjustment again in each window separately. You can also click all to overlay all selected samples in one window. And here in the left table, by clicking Control A, you can even select all to overlay all peaks across all samples. At this point, I would like to quickly switch to the FIA part. This is what I have opened in another window, just to show you how that looks like for the FIA data. So you upload them here in the same way. But then, of course, you have just this FIA profile. So in this case, I just selected the 3 QC samples. And now to set the integration ranges, this is quite simple here, just by making a left mouse click left to the peak, another one right to the peak, then it's marked, and then you click integrate, and that's it. So going back to the LC data, after the integration, you can do some evaluation for further evaluate the retention times, but this I skip now and go to the calibration curves. Here under calibration, you can check all the calibration curves of each analyte. If you want exclude a whole well, for example, because in case of any measurement issue or pipetting issue or whatever, you can just select them all by Control A, and you disable the corresponding calibration point. So for example, let's take Cal 6. We disable. Now it appears gray, and when you scroll down to the others, so it's deactivated for all compounds now. Okay, put it back. Good, and now let's go to the validation. So here, after clicking the validate button, WebIDQ will calculate accuracies and CVs of all samples that have been loaded and measured in replicates of at least 3 over the plate. When the plate successfully passed the validation criteria, the status will show OK. Below you find the validation results of the single analytes, and on the right, the corresponding internal standard is selected. In the graphic, here you find the accuracies and CVs, space saving in one window. And depending on the analyte classification, accuracies are not calculated for all analytes, whereas the CVs are always calculated when the analyte peak reached a certain intensity that is calculated based on the LOD. And when an analyte is out of range, this is highlighted accordingly. On the right side, the corresponding internal standard to the selected analyte is displayed as mentioned, along with the peak intensity. And when having a look, for example, here into this yellow well, we will find that the peak intensity of one internal standard is a bit low. So in general, the internal standard intensities and this graphics here can indicate in case there is an issue with the instrument sensitivity or ion suppression, for example. Okay, when the quantification and validation is completed, let's go to results. Here you obtain all the results of your kit measurements. So let's scroll a bit to the right. Yeah. You see all the results, all the concentration data here. And depending on the range of the metabolite concentration, you have a color coding here. So depending on whether it's valid or below the lower limit of quantification or below LOD. So this is pretty much the same as you also know from MetIDQ. Up here, you can select your plate runs. You can select the value type. So besides concentration, you can also display intensities and so on, peak areas for some analytical check, display options such as different classes you can filter or show BioIDs. So there are a variety of BioIDs available that also gives you a direct link to the corresponding website. For the Quant 500 kit, it is required to perform data normalization versus target values. And this you can adjust here. And as already introduced, the Metabo indicator will automatically display predefined sums and ratios of metabolite concentrations. When everything is done, click Export and select your file format. So you can select text, Excel, or CSV if you would like to do some further statistics in R, for example, and then click Export. Let's go back to the presentation. Good, so I hope you got a nice impression from the WebIDQ software. And back in the presentation, I would like to give you some details about the WebIDQ options that are available. WebIDQ will be available as a subscription separate from the kits and other service products. And a subscription is needed to run biocrates kits. A subscription is valid for 1 year with access to all features. Beside the cloud option, we also offer an on-premises version with a locally installed software and database. This, however, does not include all features that you enjoy with the cloud version. The on-premises version does not include database maintenance or automatic backups and updates, and also access from any computer via browser is only available in the cloud version. For the cloud version, there will be additional storage packages available in spring next year. The standard package storage of the WebIDQ cloud includes 10 GB, what is the same as in the Oracle Express database, for example, that is used by the majority of the MetIDQ users. On this slide, I would like to jump into more details regarding the differences between cloud and on-premises. Regarding the server setup, you will have a quick start with no installation, whereas on-premises is similar to MetIDQ and requires an installation on the server in the network. The database system is provided by biocrates along with the whole infrastructure. for the on-premises, Oracle and PostgreSQL can be used. With PostgreSQL, you have no limitations for Oracle license fees. In the cloud database, or in the cloud, the database is maintained by biocrates. With on-premises, the user is responsible for that. In the cloud, you will have automated updates and immediate access to the latest software. The on-premises requires manual installation. With the cloud, we have an improved performance as all computations are performed in the cloud. With on-premises, this is limited by the hardware. And last but not least, in the cloud, we can offer priority support, including database issues, what is not included with the on-premises version. On the last slide, I would like to talk about the transition from MetIDQ for existing customers. Our software team has developed a migration wizard, which helps you to migrate your database from MetIDQ to WebIDQ in an automated process. Now, how does the timeline look like? WebIDQ is already available. And when you purchase a subscription between now and April 30 in 2023, you will receive an extended subscription that is valid until April 30, 2024. After April 30 next year, a subscription will be for 1 year. Regarding MetIDQ, when kits are ordered until April 30, 2023, where MetIDQ will be discontinued, they can still be used under MetIDQ within the shelf life of the kit, what is normally 1 year when stored at -80 degrees. So our customer support team will be there for you also after discontinuation in case you need any assistance. This, however, is only available for existing customers. New customers need a WebIDQ subscription. Please note that any updates will not be available for MetIDQ anymore. So we encourage our users to upgrade and to migrate the MetIDQ database. However, of course, ongoing projects should be finished first, and afterwards we recommend to update before starting a new project. There is also a technical note available that gives you more technical details, and that also includes an FAQ section. Okay, with this, I would like to say thank you for joining the webinar and for your attention. And now we are happy to receive your questions, my colleagues and me. Thank you.